Hello, folks. Another episode of Burning Platform, and a real honor to have Whynde Kuehn today. She's in Norway today, probably 24-hour sun now. But Whynde, I'm looking forward to this. Her specialty is turning strategy into reality. So we're going to talk a lot about enterprise strategy and how to move it into operational you know, hands-on reality. Whynde, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, talk about Norway and how do you put up with the endless day?
I love it. It's such an honor to be here with you, Vinnie. Thank you so much, and can't wait for the conversation. And I have no problem putting up with almost 24 hours of sun. I'm a night person, and I can run any hour of the day, and it's honestly as beautiful as you see the pictures outside my window.
Well, wonderful. And I don't want to ask you about the other what happens in December. That can't be too. That must be a lot tougher.
That's right. Well, we try to make it cozy. That's sort of the famous, making it cozy when it's dark for most of the day.
So tell the audience about your strategy into reality. Break it down a little bit more.
Absolutely. Just sort of an introduction in terms of what I do, Vinny. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I've really lived in this gap, this passion I have around how organizations take really big ideas and move them into action, particularly for large organizations. And I've had the honor of working with organizations all around the world, from large corporations, governments, startups, and helping them to really, like I say, bridge the journey between the big ideas and being able to implement them across organizational units, products, geographies, and so on. And part of how I'm able to make that possible is through the discipline of business architecture. So I'm a longtime business architecture practitioner, thought leader, educator. I live these ideas every day. I've led some of the largest transformations, ran my own team of business architects, and I'm a co-founder of the Business Architecture Guild as well.
Perfect. So this is going to be a mirror conversation to enterprise architecture. This will be fun. You wanted to present a few slides. Why don't you do that, and then we'll start jabbering.
You got it. Happy to. So let's talk a little bit about turning strategy into reality with business architecture. And then I'll talk a little bit about how innovation fits in as well at the end. And I do want to be clear, as you've said already, Vinny, business architecture is part of enterprise architecture, right? It's part of that discipline. Um, so we're going to kind of deep dive on the business architecture part, knowing that it connects to the IT architecture. But the other thing about business architecture is that it's also a part of strategic management, a part of strategic planning. So it kind of is this Venn diagram and has a flavor of both, as we'll see here. So just
I'm glad you're doing this. One of my big um, criticisms of the industry is we have some massively smart enterprise architects. However, we haven't had enough good business architects. So we get all excited about we're moving into the cloud, or 20 years ago it was we're moving away from mainframe to client server, or now we're moving into a new analytical AI world. But they don't think about use cases. They don't think in business terms, right? So this is going to be great. And when you finish the slides, we'll go into some of the dichotomy that I see between the business architecture and the enterprise architecture.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait. And Vinny, I think you're absolutely spot on. And it's just what you say. There's many great ideas. We can do an infinite amount of cool things with technology and innovation, but really understanding the why and the relevance to the business and the use cases, and can we really deliver value, and does this make sense for us, is exactly what the business architecture brings us back to. Absolute. Absolute. So just covering, top level ideas here. The first is that strategy execution, and when I say strategy execution, I really mean strategy to execution, It's a muscle. It's a capability. It's even, I would argue, a function of organizations that is as critical as any other, because our ability to get ideas into action and react to change, as much as we know there's lots of change, more than we ever had before and moving faster than ever before, the muscle to change is critical. But most organizations, at least that I work with, big or small, they don't really think about strategy to execution as a thing. They approach it in a very fragmented way. So the key is to really build a cohesive end-to-end muscle and process that takes many disciplines, right? It's interdisciplinary, working together to define clear strategic intent and translate it into organized effort across people, process, and technology. And as I alluded to
Maybe
earlier,
you just say it's because we only do big projects. Some companies like JP Morgan Chase, they have a $15 billion IT budget, so that probably is a discipline there. But most of the companies don't do major projects, but every few years, right? Their ERP system lasts them 20, 25 years. Do you think they forget? It doesn't become part of the muscle memory, or what do you find?
yeah, I love those questions. I think part of the challenges, as you've alluded already, we're really technology focused. And I find organizations are really work and initiative focused. And it's almost like there's this hope of, from each parts of our organization, our different teams, our different functions, our different products, we think this system, we think this thing is going to help us to reach the strategy, but we're not necessarily really good at tying back to the strategy and translating the strategy. It's like we have this collection of stuff that we just hope adds up to lead us to that strategy with a technology lean to it. That's what I see in a lot of cases. And so, as I said earlier, there's often a gap between strategy and execution. And even though we've invested a lot in delivery, we have a lot of amazing strategic management frameworks. But what's missing, I find, is the translation in the middle. And that's a role that business architecture can play. And Vinnie, exactly as you're saying, what I see is different parts of organization coming up with solutions or trying to react to business direction. And without being entirely coordinated, we end up with building the same thing twice, or, the way we're building things leads to fragmented or inconsistent experiences, or, too much change for one stakeholder, or, everything becomes a priority and we just don't have enough dollars and time to invest. And even, as I was alluding to, inability to measure the results of initiatives and solutions back to what we were trying to do. There's just a little bit of a hope as a strategy there versus really the concrete assurance.
Hope is not a strategy, right?
Hope is not a strategy. That's right. Exactly. So the role of business architecture in this, and I've been so passionate about it for decades now because I really see it work, and it helps to bridge that gap between strategy and execution. So business architecture is a blueprint of an organization. Actually, it's a set of blueprints. And just like a blueprint for a home or for a physical product, blueprints help us to create common understanding, right? We can all huddle around it, understand what that home's going to look like. And it helps us to activate change because we may decide to put an addition on the home or renovate it in some way. And when we do that, when we want to make change, we go back to the blueprint. We can kind of circle what's going to change and what are the impacts of it. And that's the exact same thing that business architecture does for an organization at a macro level. It's understanding, where are we going as a result of that strategy, that digital transformation, that business model shift, that whatever it is, right? And then how are we going to get there, and how are we going to get there working together across silos? So what is business architecture? It's a holistic view of an organization and the ecosystem in which it operates. So I like to say that business architecture has grown up a lot over the years. It's really come into its own. It's formalized. And what it includes has expanded. So the diagram you see over there on the left represents the perspectives of a business that business architecture offers. And at the heart are capabilities, which are the abilities, right? The things we can do, like managing customer information, managing payments. And the value streams are flows of how we deliver value to a customer or a partner or a human resource. And then, as you can see, we are going to tie to the IT architecture, applications, software services. We tie to customer journeys and processes and so on. But what makes the business architecture so unique and why I love it so much is that it gives us a view of the whole. Right? Organizations have plenty of fragmented and detailed views of what we do. It's one shared view from these different perspectives. It transcends organizational structures and products. It's the pure business view, should be owned by the business. And it's high level, right? So it's the forest, not the trees, even though it can connect to all the trees, all the systems and details. So as it, we just come back to strategy execution here and how business architecture helps. It's kind of, I see two sides, right? Mirroring what I was talking about with the blueprint. The first is that business architecture helps us to design an organization with intent, just like we would for a home, just like we would for a product. And so the business architecture, these blueprints kind of give us canvases, right? So when we do want to change strategy or business model or decide where are we going to leverage AI, we actually have a macro level canvas and framework to have those conversations and mark them up. And then business architecture, as I'll show in a couple slides, helps us to translate change in a coordinated way across different people in the organization. So a view of strategy to execution here, and I'm
This
not
looks so simple.
What's that? I make it sound simple?
Yeah, the arrow chart you had, the next one. This looks so simple. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Except we know what it really entails, right? It's true. But actually, Vinnie, joking aside, I love that you pointed that out because part of the challenge is we have all these different views, right? We have delivery over here, we got strategy formulation over there, we got investment planning processes, we got portfolio. But it's just putting it together and saying, listen, leaving aside all the feedback loops, all the detail, these are the major, buckets of things we do to get idea into action. And with business architecture, we can answer new questions. So what I see a lot of organizations do, and this is where I see the challenge created. We start with the big ideas and develop strategy. And there is no stage 2. We just go to the initiatives, or even worse, to the solutions, stage 3 or 4. And it is by not having a stage 2, that's where all of those issues that I showed in the cartoon bubbles earlier, that's where they're born. So things like redundant solutions or, everything's a priority, they look like execution and planning problems, but they're actually a result of what we do or don't do in step 2. So step 2 allows us to architect and inventory change together and ultimately bundle work together at a higher level and potentially more efficient as we do that. So role of business architecture, 2 things: to inform strategy, to translate it, to shape work at a macro level, and it gives us the golden thread from strategy to architecture to execution and initiatives. So to unpack that a little bit more, what I mean when I say business architecture translates strategy. So you may remember some words earlier on. I say good strategy execution requires clear intent translated into organized effort. So, even though this looks like a spreadsheet, this looks very simple, this would be ideally in an enterprise architecture knowledge base where we can aggregate and connect lots of different things, because the clear intent comes from our, unpacking strategy into specific focal points to understand it, including our course of action, not just, open objectives. And instead, again, of going to initiative, you can see the value streams and the capabilities are where we translate into organized effort. And I know it doesn't look like much, but that is a game changer, because so many of the things we're doing in an organization and so many objectives and plans that we have, they are going to impact the same capabilities and the same value streams. So just like having a blueprint where we can circle and say, hey, the renovation's happening right here, this is what the capabilities and value streams do for us. They allow us to point out where change is happening and be able to aggregate around it, because customer preference management, in my example here, well, that's, supporting one objective, but there's likely many things we're doing to that capability as well, with AI, with, regulatory, with all sorts of things. And then where the real change happens, as you see, is in the people, process, the information, and the technology. So to show it in a little bit different visual, without capabilities in the middle there to translate our change, we got a lot of action. We got direction. And like I said, I see a lot of organizations, we kind of run after this in silos, creating initiatives and solutions, and everybody's brainstorming how we get there. But those things, even with our best efforts, can conflict and be redundant. And they're just a lot of cognitive load. So the idea is taking the same direction and bundling the work around capabilities, and then initiatives. And when I say initiatives, they could be programs, projects, sprints, right? They could be any type of work, basically, is what I mean. But we bundle the work around the capabilities. So ultimately, we are continuing to enhance capabilities over time, which allows us to control the change to stakeholders, as well as shape our initiatives in a more efficient way for our precious resources. And even though, yes, sir.
It gets denser and denser.
Yeah. So just to wrap up on the strategy execution thread, business and IT architecture play an important role up front in here to inform direction and translate it into a harmonized set of changes to people, process, information, and technology. But strategy execution takes a village, right? It takes lots of teams working together, hand in hand, to be able to get idea into action. So this is really the bigger idea here. So Vinnie, I'll share a few ideas around innovation, and then happy to have some conversation. I know this is an area that you're very passionate about. So business architecture is also a pretty key enabler of innovation for first and foremost, the reason that you said. It allows us to take innovation ideas and technology solutions and put them in the context of the business in terms of its relevance and its priority. And business architecture can help to generate ideas. It can help to assess impact, viability, and most certainly how to scale and where we should be experimenting with those ideas. And it also gives us a holistic view of innovation across an entire organization. So one of my favorite things to do, and I'll show a picture of it in just a moment, is to really help an organization come together and share innovation ideas. So I find there's just to give you a visual, if we're a global apparel company and we do an innovation challenge, people are going to come up with a million brilliant ideas like you see here, right? And they're fantastic, but without the context, it is hard to say, does that make sense for us? Does it fit into what we're already doing? Is it a priority according to our strategy? Or, is there another place in this organization that we can use the same idea? So it's connecting those same ideas back to our business architecture blueprint, our capabilities, to put them into context. So in this case, I can see, the idea of smart fabrics and fitness tech. That's related to our customer capabilities. And that gives me the Rosetta Stone to say, yes, customer management capabilities are a strategic priority. By the way, these regulations apply. By the way, these are the leaders that govern those capabilities. And we can really, really put it all into context. And so, a little bit of a where we go from here with all these ideas. I find implementing the idea of a strategic business architecture, end-to-end strategy execution, leveraging business architecture for innovation. It's very much about new ways of thinking and working. How do we look big picture? How do we work across silos? How do we think business first instead of technology? And that's a human journey more than it is an architecture journey. So it's one person, one step, one win is what I like to say. It's assessing where we're at today, how well we're doing strategy, execution, innovation, identifying ways to try business architecture thinking and bring that lens to certain things we do, and just helping people to see that and build buy-in over time. So with that, Vinnie, I'll turn it back over to you, and I have a couple books here that talk about these ideas that we're sharing, including a brand new one that's coming out on July 11th, that's called The Execution Challenge.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Very excited.
So Wendy, let's go to the innovation question. What I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years is I've written a lot about innovation, several books about innovation. So I'm always looking at companies that lead the market, right? But what I've seen in the last few years is people are struggling to catch up to the world is growing much quicker than usually businesses lead the world. That's how the world progresses. But let me give you 3 examples of where it hasn't been keeping up. Okay. So if you look at industries, in the last few years, we've had COVID, we've had the Ukraine crisis, we've had climate change crisis, and we've had massive digital transformations, right? In different ways, each one of them has completely transformed industries. What that has meant is there are a whole bunch of new applications that have become essential that we didn't need 5 years ago. So let me give you 3 examples. Healthcare, telemedicine, right?
Hmm.
We all wanted to go see our physician or whatever in person. Well, now we're much more comfortable in the last 5 years doing telemedicine. So that's become an essential application for a clinic or hospital or whatever, right? Didn't need it 5 years ago. You look at utilities. 5 years ago, EVs weren't a big demand on their grid. Now they need charging station infrastructure and billing. That's become an application, must have. If not today, they need to be preparing for it, right? Again, brand new applications become essential. You look at retail. 5 years ago, we used to all walk up into stores and, hey, I don't need this, please refund it, right? Now 20% of e-commerce is returned. We can't afford to have associates making a decision. Should I take it? Should I not? There needs to be a much more scaled up returns process, which is not only accepting it, but the reverse logistics of making sure it goes to the right supplier or it goes to charity or whatever, right? I wrote a book with 2 SAP executives last year, and we identified 100 of these applications that didn't exist a few years ago. Suddenly now they become important. Now, this is not innovation. This is what industry morphing has forced on corporations. None of them had thought about, hey, look, I need a EV charging application or a retail return application and so on. Okay? So that's one big catch up, if you will. It's the opposite of innovation. It's catch up. It's needed. The second set of applications I'm seeing is the world has changed a lot. We in the West sometimes just look at each other and go, we're doing fine. It's actually we're not doing fine. And let me give you a couple of examples. In the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a Unicode standard that became widely prevalent. And the Unicode mission statement is every human being should be able to interact with a phone, a mobile phone, or a system in their own language. It's a great mission, right? Now, the Unicode standard supports today 150,000 characters. which means they can handle left to right scripts, top to bottom scripts, God knows what all, right? Because you've traveled a lot. That is our world today. There's so many scripts, so many languages, so many accents, and so on. And it's great that computers can handle all that. But from a business perspective, what we haven't, that was called internationalization. Now we're in a phase called localization, where we're saying, okay, these countries are coming up with, and these are countries that are growing much faster than EU or US. They're coming up with their whole standards for statutory reporting, e-invoicing, different exotic taxes that we had never heard about, new customs rules, new payroll processes, and so on. Again, if you want to live in this world, your systems need to have all those capabilities. Again, I'm seeing customers having to catch up because a lot of vendors don't support. SAP does better than others, but there are 185 countries. Even SAP only supports about 60 or so, right? And most of the others only support 5 or 10. So it's like corporations are saying, I need help with this, right? The third area where I think we're catching up is, we wrongly in the software industry bought into the saying software will eat the world. Software alone cannot eat the world. We need robotics, we need drones, we need sensors, we need satellites. In combination, we can deliver just amazing innovation. So I see a lot of vendors who are not prepared. They pretend like a warehouse runs like it did 20 years ago. What today's distribution center has all kinds of robots running around, all kinds of conveyor belts, modern conveyor belts, all kinds of next generation forklifts, and so on. Software doesn't seem to acknowledge that all that exists. So I think all these areas, those three areas, vertical, geography, and other technology, I'm seeing a lot of need for catch up. You can call it innovation, because when a company does something different, they call it, a lot of them call it innovation, and it's, fine, call it innovation. But it really is catch up. Are you finding people are waking up to the fact that they need to catch up a lot?
Wow, really good question.
Long question, but it kind of frames the question about that's what the business architect should be doing, is looking ahead.
Exactly. It feels like there's an acknowledgement of a catch up, but also and I know we alluded to it, but it's very dominant in the conversations, like whatever new technologies out there, oh, we need to be doing that. Or even not very creative. How are others doing this in our industry? And we need to be doing that. I think catch up, innovate, and honestly, I think a lot of businesses know they need to be doing more. They just don't know how to do it more or faster, right? I think there's a real bias towards action because at least it feels like we're doing stuff. So yes, I do see that. I also think to your second point, there's not necessarily an appreciation of other geographies and the very creative innovation. I've spent a lot of time in different African countries. I spent a lot of time in Cuba when it just opened up, and you really see very different innovations. So yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And Vinnie, do you see, because you also spoke from a software perspective, do you see that? Is it the organizations aren't asking for those things, or the technologies aren't able to do what's being asked of them?
So when you look at the global, geography perspective, multinationals are in, some like Siemens are in 180 countries. Some of the accounting firms are in 150 countries. So they would love functionality everywhere, right? But they're realistic because they go, will I implement SAP in a small country? Probably not. So help me cover 50 countries, 60 countries, right? So there is a little bit of they are dumbing down their expectations and saying, just cover the major ones for us. The emerging markets, though, they're top 500 companies, right? If you took India's top 500 or China's top 500, they are much more demanding. It's like, why don't you do this? I could survive in India. That's my major country. You better support my GST or my, whatever unique customs requirements are in China and so on, they are much more demanding. So
Mhm.
on where, from a software vendor perspective, you are, if you focus on the MNC market, you better have it, but they are much more willing to, just say, hey, look, I know you don't do much in Vietnam.
Mhm.
You're very focused on Vietnam. And the vendor will say, well, I can't just develop for you. Find me another 50 countries and I'll be happy to do it, right? I think they are less prepared for the emerging, very strong emerging countries where you cannot sell if you don't have these capabilities, right? And the other thing is the economics of selling in those markets doesn't go well with direct selling or partner models. That's one thing the Western vendors are addicted to, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so uh, a lot of changes need to happen for vendors to be able to satisfy both the multinational and the emerging markets.
Got it. And I also think when you were talking about EVs before, right? There's this very key idea of business ecosystems. And I think this is part of the puzzle. And it's going to be interesting that the technology companies that will rise to this and even startups right in the future, but you have to have these ecosystems to work well, multiple different players adding different value. And if we can also think about our organizations, kind of back to my capability idea and understand where do we need support for capabilities? Where do we need innovation? We can potentially connect into other players as well. It could be very disruptive, right? From that perspective.
Ecosystems is fascinating. I've written quite a bit about it, and I'm a big fan of those. I sense, though, we need to become more selfish. Vendors need to start doing more rather
Mm.
than just expecting their partners to do stuff. And let me explain why. Um, when I was at Gartner, we coined the term BOPS, JBOPS, actually. BOPS for Bon, Oracle, PeopleSoft, SAP, and J was JD Edwards. We added that a little bit later. Okay. Now, that was like the pinnacle of industry leadership back then, okay, in the late 90s. Because everybody for Y2K, I mean, they were just taking orders at that point. I mean, they were so dominant that they were getting most of the business. And Wall Street loved that, right? Massive revenue growth and margins and all that. In 15 years, Jim Cramer, who runs, who has the Mad Money show, coined the term FANG. Facebook, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and Google.
Mhm.
So in 15 years, they had lost the leadership. Okay. Now, if you talk to Wall Street, it's all about the Magnificent Seven. It's NVIDIA, it's Alphabet with Google, it's Microsoft. These are all hyperscalers and AI driving technologies. Tesla is the only one that is not a technology company, and you could argue it's a technology company, right?
Yep.
It's an
Yep.
AI device on wheels. Now, when you look at their valuation, those guys, other than Tesla, which has dropped in the last year, the top three are in the $3 trillion market valuation each. Okay. And the others are at least a trillion, some of them are 2 trillion. Okay. When you look at the enterprise software vendor and services vendors, okay, SAP, Oracle, Salesforce, Accenture, very healthy companies, very healthy, right? Not one of them has even 400 billion in valuation, 1/10, 1/10. Now, you look at it and you go, what happened? It didn't happen overnight. It's been happening for 30 years because they haven't been very ambitious.
Yeah.
I've had several conversations with SAP that go, you guys keep missing these big markets. And they go, which ones? And I go, digital marketing, right? Facebook and Google ran away with it. They were nothing. They were consumer tech companies. You let them run away with the digital marketing budget. IoT, it's the big industrial companies that are doing a lot more with it, not you guys, right? Infrastructure. Well, we don't like to invest in capex. Well, Microsoft did. Look at what Azure has done, right? Amazon did. Look at what AWS is doing. So they've been very cautious in moving into new markets. And that's the
Mhm.
same caution when it comes to verticals. They go, well, we can't cover all verticals. We'll cover 3 today, another 3 tomorrow, gradually, right? Countries, the same ones. They'll go, I don't know, we don't understand Africa. Well, get the capabilities, guys, right? So I think it's time for us to slap the software vendors you and I know and say, guys, 400 billion is wonderful.
Yeah.
But you could be at 4 trillion. Okay, that's so achievable.
Yeah.
5 years ago, we couldn't think about anyone over $1 trillion in valuation. Now they're at 4 trillion, guys. You're not aiming high.
Yeah.
So
and here's what we need, right? So coming full circle, like even just, hearing you share that, companies need to have a serious command of, this is our business model, this is what we're doing, this is how technology can continually evolve it with options. Now here's the capabilities we need to do that, now here's the ones we need to do that, even driving this need more, right? So comes command from them, and just really taking charge, and not just being driven by the tech and the stuff that's happening. It's purpose, intense the difference. And then, to your point, driving those companies on what we need. Absolute. Yeah. Yeah.
well, and driving your vendors, push your
Exactly. That's
vendors
what I
to
mean.
more
Yeah.
ambitious, right?
Exactly. 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 And especially knowing it's only opportunity. It's only more opportunity, to your point, right? To serve more.
Well, Wendy, this has been wonderful. And any final thoughts?
No, no, thank you for a fantastic question. Just to say, I know we've shared a lot of big ideas here, but as in my one person, one step, one win at a time, I have seen massive change come to organizations where they entirely rethink the way they deliver ideas, and supported with business architecture. It can start with one or two people.
I just want to add in another thought on business architecture versus enterprise architecture, right? Our industry has been really blessed. We've seen some just mind-bogglingly smart enterprise architects. Hasso Plattner, Larry Ellison, Parker Harris at Salesforce. Okay, these are brilliant. I mean, what Hasso did, taking SAP from the mainframe world to client server to now cloud and all that. Amazing, right? Larry with his command of databases and infrastructure and all that. But I like to say, if Jeff Bezos had called Larry Ellison in 2007 and said, Larry, we're going to have some big distribution centers. What software can you sell us? You know what Larry would have done? He would have said, here's a warehouse management system. I'll put it in the cloud. He would not have rethought.
Yeah.
Amazon did? They completely rethought the warehouse. They said, this is going to be a big warehouse. We don't want to tire out of people walking too much, carrying back-breaking loads. So we'll bring the work to the worker. So they have hundreds of Kiva robots. They have sensors everywhere. They have packing stations with all kinds of cutting devices, they're automated devices, right? They have miles of conveyor belts, so people don't have to walk. Okay, they completely redesigned the warehouse, right? So I think I started off saying we have too many enterprise architects, not enough business architects. So you're doing a good job, but you need to challenge the business folks to say, start imagining things. Don't just buy what the enterprise architects are telling us, because they'll be all fascinated with, oh yeah, LLMs and GPUs and quantum computing and all that. Show me the freaking business results, right?
Absolutely. And as you're saying, don't take the ideas of today and try to just automate them or put them in tomorrow. Reimagine them. We have to reimagine our business models, our ecosystems, our products and services, and, as you said, with the Amazon, our operations. Well said. Well said.
Whynde, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We have our work cut out for us. So it's been a pleasure, Vinnie.
It's every challenge is an opportunity. So
that's right. And you know what? We're in a position to create the future. So that is a position of honor, and it's quite fun.
that's a great way to end it. Thank you.